Okay, so B'siyata D'Shmaya, let's jump back in. We are currently on page Reish Daled. So if you turn 2 pages over in the sheets, you'll see page Reish Daled. And we're learning over here, just to give you a very recap. Yeah, I'll take some, thank you. The other one probably. Yeah. Thank you. So just a quick recap. We're now learning about Mizmar Shir Liyam Shabbos, which is of course the paragraph. It's okay. Well, that's what it is. It's fine.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's okay. Sometimes, so we have after L'Chadodi, we read the paragraph Mizmar Shir Liyam Shabbos, and it begins by quoting over here. Just go back for a second. He quotes a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, and the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah tells us that all the days have a different shir that the Leviim would sing in the Beis HaMikdash, the Shir Shal Yayim, Hayim Yom Rishon L'Shabbos, Sheni L'Shabbos, Shlishi L'Shabbos, and so on and so forth. And the Gemara brings references within each particular paragraph that's used as one of the shirim of those days to what was created on that day. Now, we're not going to go through it now, we did it last week, but each day has some reference. Each paragraph, each song of the day has a reference to what was created on that day in the Sheishas Yimei Bereishis, the original 6 days of creation. Then we come to the Shvi'i. We'll just read this last line. B'Shvi'i on Shabbos, Hayu Aymer Mizmar Shir Liyam HaShabbos. They would sing a song in honor of Yom HaShabbos.
What are we reading from?
I'm just reading from the first paragraph of Peish Reish Gimel, but just going back for a second. And he quotes the Gemara that says, "What is this song for the day of Shabbos? L'Yom Shekule Shabbos." Right, they would sing a song for the day that is completely Shabbos, which is Olam Haba. Okay, the question he asks is, unlike all of the other shirim, of all the other songs that were sung for all the other days, we don't necessarily see any reference beyond Mizmar Shir Liyam HaShabbos, those 2 words, in the paragraph of that Mizmar to Shabbos. What's the reference? Outside of the word Shabbos, right? Because Mizmar Shir Liyam HaShabbos. And then it carries on, and it could be about any day or anything. Like, why don't we see the Gemara saying, in the same way that all the other days had a reference that was created on Shabbos, pick a Mizmar that has an overt or covert reference, in some sense, to the day of Shabbos, and we don't find that in Mizmar Shir per se. That's the first question that he asks. And then the second question is, Adarabba, on all of the others Mizmarim, why is it that none of them are called Mizmar Shir Liyam Rishon? Right, and then the paragraph continues. So Hashem Artzim Loya Table V'Yeshuv. It doesn't start. This is a song for day 1. This is a song for day 2. So why, right? Conversely, do we have about Shabbos that the song that's chosen to be sung makes an explicit reference to the day in the opening? Right. So it's like these 2 questions. On the one hand, we don't see any reference in the body of the paragraph text relating to Shabbos, which the others do, and the others lack a direct reference to the actual day, which the Mizmar of Shabbos does. These are the 2 questions that he asks at the outset. Then he introduces this idea of the reference to the Yom Shekule Shabbos, which Rashi brings and comments is the day that will mark the genesis, the beginning of a new world order, which, according to this Rashi, based on a Gemara, that says that the world will exist for 6,000 years, and then at the 7,000th, it's called the lashon of the Gemara is Chad Charuv.
No.
For 1,000 years, the world will be destroyed. Says Rashi, good. That's a pretty, like we said last week. I think it's a very what's the word? Very dark interpretation of the word Shabbos. Shabbos, it'll rest because everything will be dead. It's like everything will be resting. That's what seems to be Rashi's comment over here. We'll just read it again. It's outside, but just Sha'asera Olam Liyos Charev. The Ein Adam, the whole world will be destroyed, and there will not be people. V'chal hamalacha shayvsais, and therefore, naturally, everything that can be done won't be done because there will be no one to do it, and everything will be finished. Al Oisayim Aimrim Shir Shal Shabbos. That is the reference to this line that says a song for Shabbos. The Gemara says Liyam Shekule Shabbos. That's what Rashi says. Shabbos is Shoves because it will be Charuv.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Could be that. With technology, the robots, the computers would take care of all the work.
Baruch Shekivanta. Baruch Shekivanta. That was the whole last 10 minutes of last week's year. Of last week's year. That's everything we spoke about at the end. I gave a whole thing on AI and how we're mamish moving into a realm where the next 15, 20 years an overwhelming majority of the tasks that we currently engage ourselves with, or that the overwhelming majority of the workforce engages in, whether it's truck drivers or graphic designers, or really everything is surgeons and so on, will literally be done and much better with technology. That is not currently there yet, but absolutely will be. Be'ezras Hashem. We'll still need humans for some elements, but there's going to be, Be'ezras Hashem, a radical shift in the ways that we live. By all accounts of the people that are actually programming these things and know a fair bit about it. So I'm happy to send interviews to anybody who wants to see more. So I do spend time watching interviews by these people because it's important, So we're living literally through the second industrial revolution, maybe even more intense than that, as we speak. Yeah.
Why do you say Be'ezras Hashem as if you think it's a good thing?
I think it's a wonderful thing.
I find it really like dystopian.
Yeah. Well, it's going to either be one or the other. I mean, the question is generally, why do we say Baruch Hashem about anything? I mean, we can choose to view the world in any way we'd like. I choose to view the world in a very hopeful, optimistic way. I can't control it. If it's a thing that's happening, that's going to happen outside of my control, I have to interpret it for the good.
As we were speaking, internet.
Otherwise, I can't live. Which I should be sad the whole day that AI is developing. It's happening. I can't control it. Must be good. Has to be good.
How we use it. I mean, the internet can be a source of millions and millions of hours of Torah being learned everywhere. It could be a source
terrible
of
thing, right? But over here, with the development of these new technologies, it's much more significant than choosing to use our phone in our pocket for one thing or another thing. Meaning, this is a fundamental shift in the nature of society. Absolutely.
All the jobs will be done by others.
But more than that, I think it's a deeper, broader shift than just that. Meaning that's one symptom of it and one aspect of it. What we're talking about, really beginning to rediscover what it means to be human when we no longer have so many aspects of the human experience that have been so germane, to our experience over the last literally 6,000 since the beginning of creation.
Discover what it means.
Mashu acher. So again, when I look at the confluence of so many different energies, from the standpoint of believing, in the Torah's framework of history, where everything is literally mapping on exactly the way that if I would foretell it, this is how I would say it would be. Meaning, with 200 years that we've left to creation, we're going to want to see things starting to warm up and heat up. And when I look at shifts in this way, I'm in alignment with many other indicators. I think that again, it's an opinion. I'm not a Navi or a Bal Ruach HaKodesh or even a Chacham Harayas Anoilad. I'm just a human. But to me, it's fairly reasonable, that this is of messianic import. Right? Is it the Mashiach? I don't know anything. I'm just telling you that haloi davarhu, right? I mean, it's something that should be recognized, not simply made away. And we, as people who are meant to have the whole world in our hearts, right? As people who daven Rosh Hashanah, for the whole world, that we care about the whole world, that we were chosen to be the priesthood of humanity. We should stay on top of it. We should stay on top. We should be aware, eyes wide open, to figure out how can it be used, how can it be channeled, and so on, with optimism and hope. Yeah. So that's a little bit, but it definitely could be the end of society. In which case, Rashi al pi pshat would be right. Charuv, the world's going to be destroyed. We definitely have enough nuclear weapons to wipe out all human civilization many times over. So we're anyway have Sinai hanging over our heads, one way or another. That's Hashem's world. We have to stay hopeful and positive. Okay, so now, so that's what Rashi says. So now he begins to speak. What does this mean, charuv? What, the world will be destroyed? Chas v'shalom. Is that the culmination of human, advancement and the way that societies have ebbed and flowed and given and taken in the conversation of societal development over all of human history to then get to destruction? How does that fulfill the ratzon of Hashem, the grand master plan of the human being sort of growing up and then coming to a state of spiritual maturity? How does that make sense? The world will be absolutely destroyed. See, he brings over here, which we learned last week, just doing a quick review, sources that explain whether it's the Rikanti, whether it's the Ben Ish Chai. He brings from the Tzror Hamar. He brings from other sources that make it super clear that charuv doesn't mean the world will be destroyed. Chas v'shalom. Charuv means that the old world order, meaning the way that we experienced the world, and we spoke about physicality being, remember we used the muscle of opacity, right, turning the world opaque, right, meaning the world will become see-through from the standpoint of being able to recognize the ruchnius and everything, and something either subjectively will shift or objectively, the dial will be turned and everyone will just see Mala Aretz Dea, or a little bit of both, right? Maybe the objective happening in tandem with our subjective experience, much like the Tochacha explains that the inverse is true as well. Hashem says, if you walk with me with Keri, I'll walk with you with Keri. Meaning, again, and it's not a punishment, it's a consequence, right? The more that people refuse to recognize the Creator, the more the Creator is naturally hidden, and so on, right? These two things mirror one another. And so I think it's a bit of both, probably a bit of both. Who knows? Just suggesting, but he brings from a few of the Mefarshim, this is what it means. Of course, it doesn't mean Chas v'Shalom the world will be absolutely destroyed. It does mean, though, that everything's about to change, big time, big time, mamish big time. Just imagine, like I'm having a little bit of taste of this experience because I don't have WhatsApp for 5 days, and it's like it's totally freeing. Like, what am I without my WhatsApp groups? I'm just me. Like nothing, I'm just me. Okay, there are the technical considerations of the fact that I actually have a job and that I have responsibilities, and presumably there are people who are trying to get a hold of me and so on. You know what I'm saying? They'll have to wait a couple of days. And if they absolutely need me, they'll find me, So obviously that's not the mahalach, generally speaking. We take part in the world, like we said before. There are tools that are used. We have to use them, hopefully within limits and boundaries, and all of us are searching for that elusive sort of a perfect sweet spot, right? But there's just something freeing about the idea of disengaging from the standard, regular systems and structures and habits and so on that we become so accustomed to on the level of the individual, but even more broadly on the level of society. And what does it look like when we just disengage from that? Like when it's just us. And when we speak, just to say again, when we speak about AI, right, and we speak about a revolution in jobs, or we speak about, again, not a dystopian sense, like what are all the truckers going to do? It's like the thousand people who can't really do much, also what's going to happen and so on. But to speak about an equally probable reality where there's abundance for everyone, right? And everyone somehow, like we use the AI to come up with limitless energy so people aren't fighting over oil anymore. And let's say we stop destroying the climate, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's say everything is just okay. Like, what does humanity do then? Like, imagine if all of the mundane things that make up our day are just not, what's it called anymore? It's just not things. Like, you wake up in the morning, you have absolutely nothing to do. Kivalt. So what do you do? Right? What Elaladas Hashem. And that's what all the tzaddikim say. Right? That's what the Nevi'im say. The La'asid Lavai, there will be literally nothing. Kol echad yoshev, like the Rambam says, everyone will just sit and study and meditate and pray and love and connect and develop and unbelievable. I had this hasaga a couple of weeks back. I don't think any of you were there, which is fine. It was a huge chaval, though, to have missed it, but what can you do? But there was a Kalbach Minyan that happens monthly at a fellow very sweet Yid, Yami Cohn's house in Golders Green. Yeah, on Bridge Lane, that's right. So, Shalom Avracha. I'm so happy to hear the news. I'm sorry, I saw the message come and I lost my WhatsApp, and so I couldn't properly respond. Baruch Hashem, Chazeh Hashem, Chazeh Hashem. Should continue to hear good news. That's Hashem, continue to refuah shlema. So they have a monthly Kabach Minyan, and I was also to lead the davening a couple of weeks back. And I've davened there a couple of times, and it's always beautiful. There was something about this particular time where it was just off the charts. We did for Baye B'Shalom, we did Reb Shlomo's Mizbeach Chadash, if anybody knows the song. We must have sung that, I'm not exaggerating, for 20 minutes at least at the end of Baye B'Shalom, just again and again and again. Mizbeach Chadash, it was Taka Rosh Chodesh, right, Cheshvan. That's like, you think we're going to stop? We're not going to stop. We kept on going again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And These Friday nights over here are super early. Nobody's rushing anywhere. You'll still get your bagel even if you stay in shul another hour, Nobody's rushing anywhere. And I was thinking to myself, in those moments, surrounded just by shining Yidden, who are just celebrating Yiddishkeit, celebrating Shabbos, if you remove the necessary, tragic, but necessary limitations of time, like, oh, this is taking too long, and just the practical limitations of our voices getting hoarse, let's say, or like the psychological consideration of maybe not everyone is interested in the singing taking that long. Like, imagine you removed all of that and all you had was just in infinitude, right, or in eternity rather, of just doing that. Is that not paradise? Like, what more does a person need? So we're human, so we're limited, so we can't do that for all that long. But imagine ecstatic moments of spirituality that don't need to end. Okay? Make it more relatable, let's say. The last minutes of Yom Kippur. Imagine that, not our current experience of the last minutes of Yom Kippur stretched out for eternity, because that's more like hell than paradise in a certain sense. Person wants to regalach. But again, imagine we removed all of those aspects and it was just the pure, condensed, consolidated purity of clarity, yearning, holiness, joy, dvekus, forever. To me, that's Olam Haba. To me, that's Olam Haba. And that's just on our level. Imagine if then that moment was deepened infinitely by ever-increasing layers of hasaga and clarity. And like, what else do you need? That's not pleasure. That's the highest pleasure there is. The highest pleasure there is, And so I would like to believe that as the world gets closer and closer and closer to the time period of Chad Charuv, we're starting to see the early roots that are being prepared for that. Especially since, without getting into this whole sugya now because it's not really our subject, but especially since, if you look, for example, in the somewhat controversial Sefer Kol Atar, from the Talmud of the Gra, of the Vilna Gaon. Kol Hatar, yeah.
Tafresh.
Taf Vavresh, yeah. Kol Hatar, yeah. That comes from a pasuk. Kol Hatar, referring to the time of Mashiach. The words u'a u'a a are not actually part of the pasuk. It's Rashi, but it's a medrash Nela. So that sefer basically brings the very deep secret of the Vilna Gaon's vision of redemption that very explicitly includes technology, like very, very explicitly makes it super duper clear that based on the Zohar Kodesh prediction that in the year 1840, which l'chol hadeis, irrespective of religious interpretation, secular culture will admit that 1840 was the heart and soul of the Industrial Revolution. That was the year, and those were the years, whether 40, 50, but those years in the 1800s, those decades, that decade was when everything changed. That was foretold already by the Zohar Kodesh thousands of years ago, where the Zohar said that in the 600th year of the 6,000th millennia, based on a pasuk in Noach that describes the beginning of the flood, the gates of heavenly wisdom, as well as the gates of earthly wisdom, will open up. And the idea is that as these wisdoms develop, one being the wisdom of Kabbalah, right, the wisdom of spiritual practices, as well as, and the other being the development of science and technology, is that eventually these two things will come to merge. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe obviously did a lot of work in that regard, but today we're seeing this much, 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 much strongly. This is the topic of conversation. Or Moshe Schatz, for example, is a leading Mekubal in Eretz Yisrael. He wrote a sefer called Talmud Eser Spheres, among others. And his whole thing is this, like quantum mechanics, right, which is like the pinnacle in a certain sense of scientific development, which was only made possible, again, by new technologies that enable us to examine the world in the deepest of ways, are confirming the Kabbalistic worldview. You look at the work of somebody called Dr. Hyman Schipper. He wrote a number of things, but he wrote a book called Kabbalistic Panpsychism. It's a very long word, but panpsychism is basically the idea that there's consciousness in everything. And he's both a neurobiologist and as well, clearly, a person who's proficient in Kabbalah. It's a bit dense, it needs some hakdamas, but he demonstrates how mamish, like everything they're discovering now is absolutely aligned with the Kabbalistic worldview. And so And this is Mashiach. I mean, this is the consciousness of unity that is slowly but surely developing and evolving. And so it is impossible to me that AI, which again is the most significant development of technology perhaps ever, and the cherry on top of the technological revolution, so that everything was leading to this in terms of computation. This is where everything was always going to go. And it started with very, very, very basic AI. And slowly but surely, if you read the history, this is where everything was going. They knew about AI already in the 80s, in the 70s. They understood. They weren't anywhere close to achieving it. But it was clear that one day we're going to get to this. And maybe even beyond, when they talk about AGI and on things that are like, artificial general intelligence, where you essentially create like a superhuman power that's the sum total of all human output from beginning of time to the end of time. And maybe if it will be intelligent enough and not biased enough, it will be trustworthy enough to be consulted on issues of objective import, like which religion is true, right? Or things like this. I don't know. Can I say that this is for sure going to happen? I don't know. It's not unlikely. We're living in wild, wild times. So again, just for anyone who's watching and for all of us here, keep your eyes open, because we these are not regular times.
This is really going to be the Wild West.
Oh yeah. Oh. Hopefully the Wild East and the wild everything in between. But that's what's happening now. Chad charuv. So we're going to an amazing time where the old is we're done with the old, and that has to be reflected, of course, in our learning, in our avodas Hashem. And we're not living in Poland in 1380. This is it. We're at the threshold of Geula, so everything has to change. How we learn has to change. What we learn has to change. What we teach our children has to change. The curriculums have to be updated, etc., etc., etc. We have to. This is it. This is it. We're on the threshold of the Geula, and we have to be learning as much of it and about it as we possibly can. We're trying to do our best to channel that energy within our own hearts and minds. Okay, so that's basically a very lengthy introduction to what we said last week. So now let's look at page Reish Daled, and let's continue over here. Ukamaykin. So he says, Ukamaykin kasav rikanti. The rikanti, some people pronounce it rikanati, who's an Italian makobel. He writes, "Sim libchal amroi," and pay attention to this word. What does this mean? V'chad charuv. And for 1,000 years, the world will be destroyed. What does this mean? That doesn't say that afterwards it will be destroyed. Remez, right? That there will be 1,000 years of destruction, right? Meaning there's a remez, right? Because if you would assume that it means that after 6,000 years the world will be destroyed, it would say the 6,000 years will be destroyed. Right? Meaning 1,000 years after the destruction. You don't have 1,000 years of consistent destruction. It's either destroyed or it isn't, right? The word chad charuv in the context of 1,000 years of whatever this means, charuv, only makes sense if you learn it in the way that we're interpreting it, right? Which isn't 1,000 years of consistent destruction, because presumably, like, if it's destroyed, it's destroyed, It doesn't take 1,000 years to destroy the world, as we just mentioned, chas v'shalom, but it takes the push of about 7 red buttons, in different very strategic locations that can reach the whole entire world. It's pachad pchadim, which, by the way, just as an aside, it's also important to be aware of. We meaning, not just should we have our eyes open to all the positive, wonderful things we have to understand the precarious position the world is in. Like, we have to, and we have to face it eyes wide open. This is God's world. It's not my world. I have nothing to be afraid of. I have absolutely nothing to be afraid of, because I'm not here for me. This is Hashem's story. So I have to know all parts of Hashem's story, every aspect of it. Don't shy away from a thing. And just to know, we are mamish in the balance. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely beyond shocking, the state that the world is currently in. So something's got to happen, one way. But hopefully it will be the other way. But this is how it goes, right? So he says it cannot be the chad like 1,000 years of destruction. It means, like we said, it's also brought in the Magid Mesharim.
Sorry,
yes.
I don't get it. To me, it looks like he's saying it's not that there will be 6,000 years and then the world will be completely destroyed, but only for 1,000 Connected Shabbos. But you say no. So what?
Right, no, because the Havamina is to say that if you learn the Gemara that says that the world will exist for 6,000 years, and one will be destroyed, so you would think that On a simple level, the world is actually destroyed.
Right.
He's saying loy amr, but it doesn't say
doesn't
the
say
world will exist for 6,000 years
after that.
and then it will be destroyed, right?
Uh-huh.
But it says 1,000 years of charuv, which doesn't make sense, right? Because again, if it's destroyed, it's destroyed. If it's not destroyed, it's not destroyed. It's
But
not.
it sounds from the way that for 6,000 years will be a world, then for 1,000 years there will be destruction.
No,
for
so
1,000.
so then he says, he doesn't say rak elef echad shel chareva, or 1,000 years of destruction. No, he says actually what it means is a metaphor. Rak elef echad keneged Shabbos, right? So it means that there's something Shabbos-like about this seventh millennia, which is referenced by the word charuv. So it doesn't actually mean an actual destruction. Okay, that's basically okay. So, but again, this is just to get us into it. And again, the Magid Misharim from Maran Bet Yosef. He says, you know what it means? 1,000 years of destruction. That mile alma, this worldliness, will not be tekifin, will not be powerful, like it was. And again, this will be comparable to the world being destroyed from the standpoint of us disengaging from what was and opening up to what will be. And it's very exciting and amazing. But it doesn't mean that the world will actually be destroyed. Means that it will be destroyed from its previous form. Okay, so it brings a bunch of sources for that particular idea. And also take a look, he says in Shabbos Kodesh HaRashba, Shabbos Kodesh HaRedbaz, Shebavada, again, other sources, Bavada in a kavanah b'mamar v'chad charuv. Now he's just showing off at this point. It's like he brought already 5 sources, and now he's like, yeah, and by the way, if you need some others that came much after the previous ones, whatever. So he says, check it out. Shabbos Kodesh HaRashba and Shabbos Kodesh HaRedbaz, which are like Shabbos Kodesh Svarim, the most obscure Svarim. Like nobody learned Shabbos Kodesh Svarim. But he knows. Amazing tzaddik. It does not mean again that the world will be destroyed. It will be a world of reawakening. The tzaddikim will be brought back to life. That's what it means. Okay. So he says, good. But looking back at the Gemara, which told us that on the 7th day we sing a Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, which the Gemara then adds is L'Yom Shekula Shabbos, right? The day that is all Shabbos, which which Rashi rather comments is a reference to the Olam Haba, essentially, right? The world that will be renewed, that will be different from the current world perspective. So he says, like it's true that the simple meaning of Yom Shekule Shabbos, because that's what the song is, right? It's the Gemara obviously is referencing a song that is sung on every day of the week. What's different about the song that's sung for Shabbos is that all the other songs, and maybe that's the imik of the Gemara, right? The Gemara shows that all the different paragraphs from Tehillim, the Prakim, that are sung on the various days, make reference to that day of creation. There's another answer to this question. I don't think he doesn't give this answer, but that's, I think, Stam, maybe even Shat. I think this is MS. The reason why the other paragraphs all make reference to one of the days of creation is because those songs are actually a reference to the day of the week on which we are saying them. So Hayom Yom Rishon LeShabbos is a reference, Mamish to Rishon LeShabbos, a reference to Sunday, because Sunday is just Sunday, right? Monday is just Monday, Tuesday is just Tuesday, and so on. But the song of Shabbos, says the Gemara, is not a song about Shabbos. It's a shir liyom shekule Shabbos. It's because Shabbos is not a day. That's why we go back to our previous shir, and we've learned that Shabbos is not a day. So the week is 6 days, right? We said already, Shabbos is forever. You go into Shabbos, you enter into a portal that goes forever. But then Matzah Shabbos comes, and what's it called? Okay, cool. Part of your neshama is still journeying endlessly with that Shabbos. Things reset, and you go back to Sunday again. But there are. Remember, we had a few shirim on this. Shabbos doesn't end. Right? We said live Shabbos like there's no tomorrow, right? Because there is no tomorrow in a certain sense. Oisi la'olam, says the Ar Chaim HaKadosh. Shabbos is la'olam. Every Shabbos is forever. So the real intention of Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos is not a reference to the day of Shabbos, because again, there is no day of Shabbos. It's a reference to Olam Haba, that Shabbos is only valuable in as much as it is a me'ain Olam Haba, right? It's a taste of the world to come. It's a little foretaste of that experience. See, he brings over here, Gemara, right, to the Gemara that says that the Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos is Liyom Shekulei Shabbos, HaMuskim Mizmor Zeh, Hainu Lo Asalavai, right? It's a reference to the world to come. However, but Targum Yonasan and the Midrashim Perushu Mizmor Sekepshutai. They learn the first line of this Mizmar that says Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos. They don't use the Gemara's drasha of Liyom Shekulei Shabbos. They learn that it's actually a reference to the seventh day of the week, to Shabbos itself. Al Kol Shabbos v'Shabbos, that it is a Mizmar that's actually applicable to each particular Shabbos. V'yeshel Haven, again, we have to think and contemplate and wonder and understand, like we mentioned in the beginning of this year, Heichon Merumas b'Psukim Elu in Shabbos. Where do you see in any of the Psukim, any of the verses in this particular paragraph, a reference to Shabbos? Again, it makes more sense for it to be a reference to the Olam Haba, because it makes references to a time when the whole world will understand that everything was always Hashem. Lahagid ki yashar Hashem tsuri, that everyone will see God is yashar, God is straight. He's our rock, He's our creator. And there's no distortion, corruption within Him. Kasher Yikuim, which seems to be a reference to the time, which is not a pasuk from this Mizmar, but a different Mizmar in Sefer Tehillim. V'chol kalni risham agadea tarmam nekarnes sadik, right? Which is a Chabad song, but also as a pasuk first, and then it became a song from Chabad. Yeah. V'chol kalni risham agadea. And the pace.
I remember.
Pada v'shalom nafshi. No, is it not in that same Mizmar?
Shalom is nun hey.
Ah. Okay.
Hashem is the last pasuk of one of those.
Kitzer, it means agadea, to cut. V'chol karner sham agadea, and all of the horns, right, of the Rishayim that they use sort of to gore will be cut off. Tormam nakarna sadik, and in their place will be lifted and elevated. It's okay. Let's not get caught up with it. Tormam nakarna sadik will be elevated, the crowns of the kings, of the tzaddikim rather. Right, and that's a reference again to the next pasuk. It's a reference to the time where all the enemies of Hashem will be yavedu, will be destroyed. And all of those who are banded together to do evil will be yitpared, will be dispersed. Again, Yom Shabbos Kipshuta. What does this have to do with Shabbos? It has to do with this, that Shabbos is an aspect of, or a me'ain, or a likeness of the Yom Shekulah Shabbos that I get. But what does it have to do with just the day of Shabbos? So he's clarifying. According to the Gemara, this is not a question, Adrabah, because the Gemara says that the Mizmar of Yom Shabbos is not really about Shabbos, it's about the Yom Shekulah Shabbos. Perfect. So that's why there's no reference to Shabbos, because it was never about Shabbos. And there are abundant references to Olam Haba, which is beautiful. And that's why Rashi says, Chad Charuv, right? It's referring to that day, that which is a 1,000-year period where everything is different, like we said. But according to the Targum Yonasan and according to the Midrashim that learn this Mizmar Kipshuta, that it's a reference to the day of Shabbos, where do you see? Where do you see any of these aspects on Shabbos? The Amr Chazal, see, he says like this, but you should know, Shabbos Kodesh me'ein Olam Haba, that even though Shabbos is not Olam Haba, and none of these things are actually true on Shabbos, where v'chol karner shamagadea, right? Ki ne'avecha yevedu, like we don't see that that's the case. There's still people working actively chas v'shalom against Hashem, against MS. They work overtime, they're working all the time. But Shabbos is a me'ein olam haba. V'chein darsh Rabbi Sina b'mechilta ala pasuk, and the mechilta medrash comments on the pasuk ladas ki ani Hashem mekadeshchem, that you shall know that I am Hashem who sanctifies you. Says the medrash la olam haba. I sanctify you for in preparation for Olam Haba Kagain Kedusha Shabbos Ba'olam Hazeh, which is similar to the sanctification of Shabbos in this world, right? So your sanctification Ba'olam Haba is already again sort of dripped and leaked into our experience of Shabbos in Olam Hazeh. Nimtzein Alamedim, we learn from here Shu Mikdushas Olam Haba, that the sanctity of Shabbos is not the sanctity of Shabbos. The sanctity of Shabbos is the sanctity of Olam Haba. It's mamish heavenly. It's otherworldly. We think, so we go from the 6 days of the week until this holy day of Shabbos. No. You go from the 6 days of the week into a day that is a vessel for the sanctity of after Mashiach came. You see, it's not the holiness of Shabbos. Shabbos is holy because La'asid Lavo is holy, and Shabbos is a little bit of a channel, a portal, allowing us to access that light. The Nimsa, see, he says beautiful. Ki mizmar zeh achein oisei b'yom shekol Shabbos. So he says, good. What do you expect it to talk about? Gefilte fish and lakshan soup, and how many songs the Chazan dared to sing during Kabbalah Shabbos and made everybody crazy. That's not the mizmar is going to speak, because that's not what Shabbos is. Of course, a mizmar about Shabbos is going to speak about Olam Haba, because that's really what Shabbos is. You see, that's really what Shabbos is. So Memela, it's perfect. Because the holiness of Shabbos and Olam Hazeh, it turns out, is just a little bit of a glimmer of that great Shabbos to come. We could discuss about Tur, like the Tur writes in a Eser about why it is that the afternoon of Shabbos day, Mincha time, is called Eser Ratzon, is a special time of goodwill and favor and a revelation of incredible compassion from Hashem. Shal Shabbos b'mincha sha'ayim b'tefillah, where we say over there, Ata echad v'shimcha echad, shehu keneged haShabbos shel ha'asad lavai. Because he says that prayer is referring to a time when the achdus, the oneness of Hashem, which is not to be found in Nikla, right? Nikla of Torah doesn't really address the oneness of God. It addresses God's will and God's commandments and so on. Kabbalah Chasidus teaches us about the unity of God. That's where the oneness of Hashem. Yeah, Bayamahu Bidyuk. Yeah, Hashem Echad U'Shmai Echad. Right. The light of Mashiach is bound up with the revelation of the reality of oneness, right? Which is only fully understood through the doctrine of Kabbalah, through the doctrine of the spheres, as well as, again, in the physical realm, through quantum mechanics and things like that, right? Which is the Lahavdil, but which is the pinnacle of scientific inquiry, to get to the point where they cannot go any further, to the point that we everything is a paradox. We don't, our concepts fail at that point, where both of those doctrines are telling us that everything is unified, everything is one. Bein begashmius, bein beruchnius, because there is no gashmius, because there is no ruchnius. There's just ein oid movadai. Ein oid movadai. And this is the light of Mashiach. See, he says, Memela, the pinnacle of Shabbos is Mincha, because after that already it's the last couple of minutes, and then boom, and then again everything resets back to Sunday. It's like there was this movie years ago called I don't know about Groundhog Day. There's a movie called The Truman Show, right? Jim Carrey lives right. He lives in like this in this world, that's a fake world, and it resets every day. And it's like he starts to figure out, like, this seems very, very familiar, because at the whole set, like, it's all for him. It's all a TV, and there's something very deep about that. There's something very, very deep about that. Because sometimes you can get that feeling, waking up in the morning and it's like you're doing the same stuff, making the same coffee, and it's like the deja vu is so heavy. It's not even deja vu, it's like literally the same exact thing that you do every single day. And get into the car exactly the same way and turn it on and listen to the radio and like whatever it is that you do, it's a bit of a show, because the whole world is a show. The whole world is just a bit of a Truman Show, So Sunday, boom, the whole week starts again. It's just that it's the same structure of time, just reset, and then we have another 6 days, to journey and foray and explore and prance around a little bit and try our best. But the pinnacle of Shabbos is Mincha. Memela, conceptually, the tefillah of Shabbos, of Mincha, is going to most explicitly reflect the energy of Shabbos, which is the holiness of La'asid Lavo. How? So that's why in Mincha we say Ata Echad, V'Shimcha Echad, Umi Ka'amcha Yisrael Goy Echad. But the whole thing is Echad, 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 because it's absolutely messianic. It's absolutely Olam Haba.
I've heard that, so it's not the Nusach here, or in English Nusach, but some Nusach it's Mincha, it's Vayonichu Bom instead of Vayonichu Bo.
I think it is the Nusach here. Nusach Sfardis is
Sfard.
Sfard. You're saying Ashkenaz now.
So I mean, in
Ashkenaz doesn't say V'yunuchu Vav?
no,
It's not
no, in the English,
Vo,
whatever.
everywhere.
Artscroll has it.
Doesn't whatever. Side point.
That's
But
radical.
some
That's
people
wild.
in the English minhag it's not. But like some people they have it's v'yonichu vom and mincha instead of v'yonichu vom.
Sure.
Yeah. Because
Sure.
it's
Friday night is what?
Artscroll.
And then
Sure.
morning is
It's
the
all.
morning.
It's Al Pi Kabbalah.
I think the Nusach Anglia is
That's shocking. That's really shocking.
Yeah,
I wonder which one is.
Olam
Which one is?
Haba.
I know. But the question is, which one is older?
About 10 Sidorim, sure.
And they're all vo.
But yeah.
Okay, I'm sure there's a place for that too. Al Pi Kabbalah. Everybody will find their place. It's good.
Kabbalah is
Yeah. Generally speaking, Al Pi Kabbalah Friday night is Yenuchu Vav
Vav.
because that's the aspect of, like we said in previous year, that's Malchus, right? That's the Shekhinah. Shabbos day is male energy, right? Bechlal, the sun is male. Klape, the moon, which is the nighttime, which is female, right? So the sun is Tiferes there. Ampin, the sun is Kutchabrichu is the reference, and that's Vo. And then the unification, excellent, the unification of above and below, right? Science and Kabbalah, heavenly and earthly wisdom, nature and human innovation. All that is Shabbos Mincha. V'yenuchu Vav. And that's the ultimate, if you think of it. If you think of it, there's no greater, in a certain sense, aspect of dira betachtonim, right? Of God wanting a dwelling place in the lower realm than the technological innovations that we're currently creating. It's unbelievable. It's mamish unbelievable. The human innovation based on the world that God created, which is raw energy. Which it's all in potentia, right? It's not like human beings created something that didn't already exist. It's the channeling and the utilization and the mixing it's again to think that all of this happened in a span of a few thousand years, that humans went from making tools and wheels to developing technology, and it's ever increasing. The word is cumulative in ways that are beyond incredible. I mean, to say that this isn't divinely sanctioned and that we're whatever, like this is obviously appears, at least to me humbly, but obviously the trajectory that all of human civilization and society is heading from the standpoint of Hashem wanting the human being to partner with Him in creation. We're doing our part, right? And it is also true that our holy nation has had a disproportionate presence in the sciences and the philosophies and so on and so forth, but that's not the main thing. The ikr for us is Kabbalah. The ikr for us is doing the work theologically, philosophically, which Nebuch Rav Yasha bar Soloveitchik bemoans the fact that the Mikubalim didn't really know, outside of a very, very, very privileged few, so as to be completely insignificant in number, didn't know how to communicate our theology in a language of philosophy, which the Christians, of course, did. Right? Which the Christians did. Aquinas and so many of the others, or for example also Hegel, wasn't religious per se. It's effectively a Christian, meaning it's built on Christian concepts, and we didn't really know how to do that. Again, you have Kuzari, you have the Rambam, but it's not Kabbalah per se. It's metaphysics that's very heavily influenced by Averroes and Aristotle and others. Now, we're talking about what's unique to us, right? Which the Rambam didn't have. It wasn't revealed in the Rambam's time, but has become steadily, which is a huge debate. Cool, but fine. Basically, take whatever you want to think. I'm just presenting my humble opinion. We have at this point in history all the gates open. Ideas that contain the synthesis of every single philosophy, every single religion, every single culture, every single social approach, movement. And Kabbalah is a literal theory of everything. It's a literal theory of everything. Not operating on the realm of the physical, but operating on the realm of the super-physical to reveal the shroshim, or the shroshei abriya, that literally explain everything in a super revealed way. The problem is that we haven't taken part in the marketplace of ideas to the extent that maybe we could have, should have, will, might, largely because of our unwillingness to participate, and our lack of interest in participating. But who knows if the new frontier, isn't again us standing up and delivering to the world the message that we were always intended to bring it, which goes back to Avram Avinu, Av Hamoin Goyim, like we learned in last week's parsha. Avram was all about Echad, right? It's a pasuk. Echad Haya Avram. It doesn't just mean Avram was one individual. It means Avram's whole thing was Echad. Now Avram is a person of Achdus, the meat of Chesed, the meat of Einoid Movadai, Nefesh Asher Asu B'charan. And so, maybe this is the next stage. Unbelievable. That's
the thing, according to the Nusach, Sfard, now I understand possibly better the Shabbos Kodesh, because the Sfard says, V'nuchuvam, Kol Yisrael, Shabbos Kodesh, V'nuchuvam Kol Yisrael.
Ari. The Sfard doesn't say Shabbos.
Whatever, it's Shabbos Kodesh only by Minche. So possibly there, when you have the most Achdus, Shabbos is not the physical day of Shabbos, but the Shabbos below, the Shabbos above, the Shabbos of science, the Shabbos of that. All the Shabbos those
converge. Beautiful, gewaldic. Unbelievable. Okay, so let's go back and say, so he says, Le'inine Yisrael shel Shabbos b'mincha sha'imim b'tfila ata echad, again, shu k'neged ha-Shabbos shel asad lavoi. Ki ba'ois ha-sha'a me'ir b'yoser shleimus ha-Shabbos shu Shabbos shel asad. And that hour is revealed, right? They say that it's a beautiful remes from one of the earlier tzaddikim. Maybe I saw it in the Divrei Cheskel of Shinav or the Avodas Yisrael of Kashnitz. For some reason, those two names are coming to mind. It could have been either of them. I don't know. Who says Yesh Koina Olamai B'Sha Achas? When the Mishnah says there are those who acquire Olam Haba in 1 hour, is the 1 hour of after Mincha Shalosh Shidduchos time. That's the Yesh Koina. What is the Sha Achas? Yesh Koina Olamai B'Sha Achas. That hour. Of course, Breslevers say that it's referring to 1 hour of Hispodidus. Yesh Koina Olamai B'Sha Achas, because Rabbi Nachman says you have to do Hispodidus, preferably for an hour. But that hour is much more, I would say it's much more accurate, because it's Yesh Kana Olamai is a reference to Olam Haba. If you want to taste Olam Haba, it's that hour of Shalosh Shidduchos. As Chatai Chatosenu Ani Masker Hayom, that Shalosh Shidduchos is not how it's supposed to look here. I hate to say it, I'm sort of employed by a shul that's really wonderful, that has as its, I guess, minhag hanhaga, that there should be a shir, Shalosh Shidduchos, and I just so happen to be the one that they chose to give the shir. So what can I do? And it's an opportunity to teach, and it's wonderful. You think Shalosh Shidduchos is supposed to be a lecture out of your mind? Chas v'shalom, has mila haskir. This is not how Shalosh Shidduchos was kept throughout history. Shalosh Shidduchos is meant to be in the dark, preferably if you can. So set your timers at home, with maybe candles lit if you have candles from before Shabbos, and maybe even no candles lit or everything's dark. And it's a time for introspection, meditation, expressing our ratzon, our deep, deep yearning. And then in that space, if you have a tzaddik or a rebbe or somebody who's not preparing a shir or speaking from a paper or giving a source, but who's plugged into that space and words of Torah flow through him, that's what Shalosh Shidduchos used to be. At least by the Hasidim, that's how Shalosh Shidduchos is. It's the Yom Kippur of the week. It's not a time to be in a semi-comatose state as somebody gives a ramble. That's not what it is. So much of our Yiddishkeit that either our children or sometimes ourselves find unengaging, not full of life. It's because we're not really doing it right. If we would do it in an immersive way, and not either, again, religiously rigid from the standpoint of if we were Hasidim, so then no, because I guarantee you the Hasidim also are missing, and I know that for an actual fact, because I'm privileged enough to be in touch with, might surprise you, people in super, 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 super Hasidish and very plugged in religious communities who are desperate in the same way that we're desperate because they don't have Hasidus, and most of us don't have Hasidus, and the Hasidus that we do have, whether it's in Chabad or Breslev, is so dogmatized and so, etc., that it's also zillow, more often than not. But if we had Yiddishkeit the way that Yiddishkeit is intended to be, then we would feel something. Because how can you not feel something? But instead, it became, we have some kind of convoluted Torah that maybe, according to some poskim, it's like eating. It's like, I said, let's call a spade a spade. You know what I'm saying? It's a third meal. It's like, don't wash by the kiddush and then have your, these are all sort of, what's the word? Again, they work halachically. It's fine. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, okay, so you got it in. Like, you fooled the system. It's great. Okay, now you'll get chesed, whatever it is. But like, and again, I'm being facetious about it, and I'm allowed to, because I do the same thing. Again, like I said, I literally give a shir. I'm telling you that this is not the lichatchila. This is not the way that it's supposed to be. If anybody was privileged to ever be shal shudis by a tzaddik, which when I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, I went week after week after week to Rav Tzvi Meyer Zilberberg. If anybody knows Rav Tzvi Meyers, it was a spark of the Berditchever Rav in our time. He jumps on the table and he runs to the mikvah right before he speaks in the middle of Shalosh Shudas. He has a private mikvah, he goes and he comes back. And fire. It's pitch black. All different kinds of Jews come to hear him, because he's not a rebbe. He doesn't have a chasidus. He's a mashpia. And that's the future, by the way. It's not chasidus. It's just Yidden speaking to Yidden. We have to get out of the boxes. You'll forgive me. I know some of us are out of the boxes. I don't like this business. I'm a Chabad chassid. I'm a Bresler chassid. I'm a Yid. You can be united towards something and have a headquarters as long as you really connect with it. Beautiful. But by the mashpiyim you find people who are just, and that's why you have the Mezruchniks come with the white kippahs, and you have Americans come and there are Hasidim who are like furtively translating the Yiddish in real time to people, little chaburas in the back, and I promise you walk out of that room usually 3 hours after Shabbos ends, if you've stayed for the whole thing. So then you know what Shabbos is.
What is it? Tzvi Meyer what?
Or Tzvi Meyer Zilberberg. Yeah, so the same applies to Itcha Meyer Morgenstern. These are the two Meyers. Yerushalayim is a very, very well-known mashpia. You go to Itcha Meyer for Shal Shudas, and all the other Rebbes. I'm just saying from my personal experience. I'm sure by the Rebbes it's also exalted. Some more than others, whatever. I'm sure by them. That's the Yiddishkeit it's meant to be an experience. You don't have to always have information all the time. Now, again, I'm not knocking, like it's my own shir, and I think Baruch Hashem, like it's been successful, and hopefully people gain from it. But like, you can give it any other time, Shalosh Shudas is it's supposed to be Shalosh Shudas. There's a certain Jewish spirit of Shalosh Shudas that gets lost when we replace it with a lecture. And it's a commentary on our society and what it values. Because like Ki'ilu, the suggestion is, it's a bit of a waste of time to sit around the table in the dark and introspect. And what you have then is a Judaism that on the outside looks beautiful, and on the inside is rotten, is absolutely rotten. Is rotten. Not because it is rotten, but because something inside has rotted. It's because the wellspring has dried up. And so what we need is a return to that kind of consciousness, which is bolstered, of course, by learning. Again, I'm no enemy of shiurim. I give like 8 of them a week. Like I love shiurim and I love learning. Now we have to learn. But the whole learning is supposed to bring us into Maisa. Gadol halimud, especially this kind of limud. Imagine a person's a professor of Hasidism. There's such a thing. People become professors of Kabbalah. It's like, it's the biggest shtus in the world. What does that mean, a professor? The whole Kabbalah is not an intellectual pursuit. The whole point of Kabbalah is that it's supposed to foster a certain consciousness within a person. It's supposed to give a person capacities to contemplate and to introspect, to daven properly. That's what Kabbalah is. It's prophecy. Imagine that, a professor of prophecy. Imagine a person's he's a professor of prophecy. He ever had a prophecy? No, but he's a professor of prophecy. Please, this is not what the Nevi'im were. You understand, the Nevi'im were professors in prophecy, but they became Nevi'im afterwards, and they spent their time in ecstasy, because that was the road where Kabbalah led, So anyway, so this is what Shabbos is supposed to be. We have to bring back the soul of Shabbos, which is called Yom Nishmasa. It's the literal day of the soul. That's what Shabbos is. It's the day of the soul. And again, to the degree, and it's just an indicator, it's a symptom, to the degree that our Shabbos has not been that, it has an impact on the whole Yiddishkeit, right? The ways that we experience everything else. It's not Shabbosdik, because our Shabbos is not Shabbosdik. Gone is the spirit of Yishuv Adas. I hate to say it, bad things. Again, I go around to some of the shuls here. How could it be that Shabbos afternoon there's nobody in shul learning? And not to be mekatrik, how could it be? So my limud chus that everybody's sitting at home and learning. Let's be honest. What is Shabbos for? If not, not because there's someone's giving a shir, but come to the base medrash, open a sefer. It's Gan Eden. It's the only time in your whole life that you have a couple of uninterrupted hours. So again, you put in the time with the kids and so on and so forth. But Shabbos has to be for Hashem. It has to be for Hashem to some degree. I'm not saying a person learns the whole hours. I enjoy my Shabbos shluft like the next guy. Again, everything in balance. But our she'ifas, our awareness, Shabbos is a day that's meant to be a spiritual day. It's not a social day, and it's not a day off. It's a day on, mamash, a day on. Then if we do that, you'll see our week will change. Because if Shabbos is the Makar HaBracha, it infuses our Avodas Hashem of the week. Our Tefillah becomes more Amunah-oriented. Our Daf Yomi becomes more Hashem-oriented. Our interactions with other people, our concepts, our ambitions, what we can care about, how angry or not angry do we get when things in life, don't go well, etc., etc., etc. All of life is impacted by this shift. And so that's the Tefillah. Be'ezus Hashem, we didn't get very far in the sheets. We'll continue next week. Our Shabbos should be Shabbostic again, and it should have its explosive
Shabbos
impact on the rest of the week. Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני נושם.